This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of June 23rd, 2024. Content authenticity statement. Around 90% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, the human. You're going to see screenshots and walkthroughs of a bunch of different generative AI systems in the opening section. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to learn why this kind of disclosure is a good idea and might be required for anyone doing business in any capacity with the EU in the near future. What's on my mind this week? Boy, have we got a whopper for you this week. How to use generative AI for professional development. In all of the talk about the flashy applications of generative AI, in particular large language models like those that power ChatGPT and similar services, we lose sight of some of the less fancy but arguably more important capabilities. One of those capabilities is their nearly unmatched power as a tool for professional development and training. Why? Because for many knowledge workshops, language is how we learn. Even for non knowledge work jobs like professional trades, a substantial part of the job and learning the job is through language. And language, you can guess by the name, from language models, language is what these tools excel at. So, how does a tool like ChatGPT or Anthropic Claude or Google Gemini help us build professional development and training? We can look at four separate stages of use, four different categories of professional development. Explain it to me, activate the knowledge I have, help me build a systematic understanding of my knowledge, help me teach it to others. So let's look at each of these categories. The first and perhaps simplest is explain it to me. Today's language models contain multitudes of knowledge on pretty much every topic, and it can ingest and process knowledge they don't have. Once they have that knowledge, they can rewrite and transform it into nearly anything else. This rewriting capability is the key to your professional development, at least when you're getting started. Here's how. Pick a domain that you have some expertise in, something you know incredibly well, and it doesn't have to be work related. Maybe you're a painter or a musician or a gamer. Maybe you bake a mean chicken pot pie or you're a fabulous sommelier. Whatever it is, there's something in your life that you know better than most other people. Now, pick a topic you don't know as well. Maybe it's quantum physics, generative AI models, the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, thought leadership, something that's challenged you, something that just won't stick in your brain. We're going to do this live. Open up the language model of your choice. I'm going to go here to Google Gemini and prompt it along the lines of, you're an expert at and whatever the thing is you don't understand. You also know the thing you do understand. Explain the thing you don't understand in terms of a specific concept from the thing you do understand. For example, you might prompt it by saying, you're an expert in thought leadership. You also know quite a bit about red wines and wine selection, right? Because you know red wine, but you don't know thought leadership. Explain thought leadership in terms of selecting a Merlot. So if we put that right in, Gemini says, thought leadership, the wine analogy. In the world of wine, thought leadership isn't about dictating the best Merlot. It's about guiding others to make informed, personally satisfying choices. Here's how it translates. Deep expertise. A thought leader in Merlot possesses extensive knowledge. They've tasted numerous vintages. Visionary perspective. They go beyond the obvious. They might identify emerging trends. Merlots from lesser known regions. Clear communication. They articulate insights in a way that is both informative and engaging. They don't just list facts, but tell stories. Influence. Thought leaders don't just share knowledge, they shape opinions. They might encourage someone to try a Merlot from a different country. Selecting a Merlot, the thought leadership approach. Understand preference, share insights, encourage exploration. The explanation that these tools come up with is usually enough to get a difficult concept into your head. And it may take a couple of tries, it may take a couple of different domains, but your brain learns best when it can latch onto something familiar and extend a concept from there rather than try to learn something net new. Right? Our brains are actually really bad at net new. They're very happy with familiar. And so we can build on familiar with these tools by having them translate. We're going to do so much better. Use this technique anytime you're confused about something. If you're sitting in a meeting and someone says something, you don't get it, quietly open a browser, an app on your phone, and quietly ask the AI of your choice to explain it to you in terms of something you do understand. You'll get the concept quickly. and you'll get back into the flow. You'll be much happier about that, right? That's how this stuff works. Step 2, activate the knowledge you have. You're a bit of a digital pack rat, and so am I. And so is almost everyone I know, because digital things don't take up nearly as much space as physical things, right? You can have 1,000 books on your Kindle and barely have room in your bedroom for 10. You can have 1,000,000 songs on your phone, but your shelf here can only hold so many CDs. Because digital goods take up pretty much no room, you can just kind of collect them. You accumulate knowledge. This is especially true in business, at work. How many webinars have you been to? How many conference sessions have you sat through? How many photos are on your phone's camera roll of presenters' slides? And you see my point. You have knowledge stored up in all kinds of ways. And let's be honest, it pretty much collects dust. But it doesn't have to. In fact, you can take that knowledge and put it to work immediately. How? AI, of course, right? So, let me pull up a slide here. So, my friend Ashley Foss was speaking at the Marketing Profs B2B Forum. Yeah, let's go ahead and get my screen share here. And there's Ashley's slide that she shared at Marketing Profs B2B Forum. She was talking about thought leadership. This is on my phone. I took it, sitting in the audience. Well, what can you do with that? What do you see on this slide? I'm going to just load that slide literally from my desktop, which I pulled off my phone. I'm going to ask the language model what it sees. So the tool, I gave it to Gemini. The tool has gone through and read it. Right? It says assessment pillars, credibility, profile, prolific, depth of ideas. So it took all this text off the slide appropriately and spit it out. Now, automatically, this is all already more useful, right? Because the slide is a slide. Now it's text. But I might want to say, great, this was a talk about thought leadership and developing thought leadership at your company. From this slide, can you develop an outline of recommended practices to build thought leadership? Rely heavily on the slide for concept, structure, and strategy. And here we see establishing credibility, becoming the go-to expert, supporting your claims, building a strong profile, being prolific, creating diverse content, developing a depth of ideas. Right? That is now fleshed out just from Ashley's slide, unpacking the knowledge and the framework she shared. That's still just knowledge, though. It's not activated yet. It's not useful, right? So I might prompt it by saying, I'm not much of a thought leader yet. I'm not really well known, but I do have a significant domain expertise in generative AI. I do speak at various events. I'd like to be on more stages. Help me design a step-by-step tactical plan to increase my thought leadership visibility using the shared slide and your outline from it. And here's what we have. Phase 1, establish credibility and build your profile. A content deep dive. Create a compelling online presence. Speak up. Content amplification. Publish a series of articles or blog posts. Network and relationship building. Speaking engagements. Demonstrate depth of ideas and thought leadership. Thought-provoking content. Media outreach. Thought leadership platforms. That's a plan. That's a plan I can put into action with steps that are tangible and concrete. And that is just from a single slide. Think about that. That is just from a single slide in a talk. What could I unpack if I had the transcript of the whole talk? What kind of plans could I build? Every time we go to an event, people always ask, where can I get the slides? Right? I literally bought wherecanIgettheslides.com to answer that specific question. What do you do with them? You download them, you look at them, you nod, and then they go into a binder somewhere. Not anymore. Take all that knowledge you have stored up. Every time you've asked me for the slides, take all those slides you've stored up on hard drives and servers and camera rolls and SD cards and SSDs and start feeding them to generative AI. Then have generative AI build you real concrete plans of action from it. Right? If you've watched my talks and you downloaded my slides, do something with them. And if you don't have knowledge laying around, no problem. There are a gazillion podcasts and blogs and YouTube videos and channels and white papers and ebooks, all available for free online. Find some credible sources. Find some people that you trust. Grab copies of the stuff that they're giving away, right, that they're inviting you to download, and turn it into a plan of action for your professional development. So that's stage 2, activating the knowledge you already have. You already have the stuff. Now let's talk about stage 3, building a systematic understanding. After you practice activate knowledge for a while, you're going to find that you have quite a library of content, right? Quite a base of knowledge to draw from. It's now time to turn this into a foundation of knowledge, a reference system where you can start to draw conclusions from a large body of knowledge all at once. Up until now, we've been working with single pieces of content, right? A single prompt, a single slide. But that's not where the power of knowledge really shines. In an AI world, the sum of knowledge is far more than its parts because AI can keep in mind way more information than any human being can. Today's language models can operate with as much as 2 million tokens in their short term memory, which is about 1.5 million words. That is the entirety of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, right? He's the guy who wrote Game of Thrones. It's 1.5 million words. A language model like Gemini can hold that in memory and recall from it. It's that same amount of space as 3 copies of the entire Lord of the Rings series by Tolkien. No human being can hold that much information in their heads all at once with precision recall. Machines can. And outside of short-term memory, AI models can access entire document stores with millions and millions of words and recall from it and make use of it. No, so let's continue on our thought leadership track, right? If you go and ask 100 leaders what thought leadership means to them, you'll end up with 300 answers, and they'll all be different, right? That's not helpful. You want to understand the subject deeply, but suppose you wanted a particular angle. After all, the knowledge in a language model is based on a broad assessment of everything. So we asked it to explain thought leadership, and that's the big average picture. What if we wanted to focus on something? B2B thought leadership. And we want to focus on one person's expert opinion. How would we do that? Well, start with, of all places, YouTube. Go to YouTube, search for the topic you want, and maybe a specific personality. Go to, let's see, I'm pretty sure I have some YouTube videos here. Yeah, if you look, we've got a whole thing on here. She's got more than a dozen podcast appearances and interviews about thought leadership, B2B thought leadership in particular. What do you do with it? Well, there are free tools like YTDLP that will let you grab the captions, the closed captions from videos that are on YouTube and be able to download them. So if you do that, you end up with a corpus of very specific knowledge. Right? If you look here, I download those, and we have what, literally a full dozen of Ashley's appearances, guest appearances on podcasts. Now, how do we make use of this without all sorts of crazy prompting? If you want to do professional development with this corpus, one of the best things you can do. Oh, I forgot to show you. I was not sharing my screen. So there's Ashley on YouTube. There's the YouTube captions that I downloaded, all the dozen of them. If you want to do professional development with this corpus, one of the best tools to use is a free tool from Google called Notebook LM, which has been around for a while, but hasn't been super useful until recently. It recently got upgraded to a Gemini 1.5, and thus is actually useful for processing large amounts of text. So let's start a new notebook here. And let's start with some text files. And let me go get my captions. And there's my captions from Ashley. Just load them all up. And while we're waiting, we'll call this. Now, the data is loaded. And from here, with no prompting, just click on Notebook Guide. And you can say, okay, do I want any of these things generated? Maybe I want some frequently asked questions. Maybe I want a study guide. Maybe I want a briefing document. It's going to go ahead and start generating a systematic review of the data that you've uploaded. And what do we see here? We've got a thought leadership in personal branding and marketing quiz, right? It's a study guide that if you go through in materials, maybe you watch the videos, You can have this, quiz question and answer and quiz yourself. Use these materials to build your knowledge. If you're a teacher, you could say, like, here's some essay questions that you could have based on the content. That's pretty terrific. If we go into just a briefing document, here are the core themes that Ashley talks about: thought leadership, the 4 pillars framework, personal branding for career growth, strategic content creation. Thought leadership is about impact, not just influence. Really terrific. Frequently asked questions. What is thought leadership and how is it different from being an influencer? Is thought leadership only relevant for B2B businesses? What are the 4 pillars, and so on and so forth? This is a fantastic tool for processing for this kind of information. And what makes it an interesting tool, particularly to me, and unique, is that it will not return anything other than what's in the source data. So it can synthesize brilliantly and it will not return things it doesn't know. So I could go in here and say, what does Ashley suggest for email marketing to boost thought leadership? The sources provided do not contain information about Ashley's suggestions for email marketing. Right? That is super handy because what it says is the probability of hallucination is very low, because if it doesn't have the data, it's not going to return anything. That is super helpful. What's really cool, particularly if you're doing research or reading or professional development, is that you get citations back to the source text. So, what is the second pillar of thought leadership? And you can see there's little numbers here that when you tap on them, it brings you to the source, right? It brings you to where it got that information. That is really helpful, because you want to if you're using a tool like this, it's because you want to be sure that it's coming up with stuff that's not just imagining things, right? Having those sources allows you to validate that it's not just making stuff up, that in this case, Ashley actually said these words. And so that's very, very powerful. That's a very, very powerful tool. Notebook LM gives you a powerful, straightforward system of reference for any large corpus of documents. It gives you a way to connect concepts and ideas across multiple documents with a low risk of making things up. We just showed, like, it didn't make up an answer about email marketing. Instead, it said, sorry, I don't have that information. I've used this tool to examine dozens of peer-reviewed clinical papers on long COVID, right? That's a domain where you, for sure, medical and healthy, you for sure do not want it making things up. But I loaded all the clinical studies, peer-reviewed studies in, and got some really good answers on the thing. I've used it for marketing strategy, taking a bunch of things and having the tools extract out marketing strategies. Reddit conversations. I've loaded an entire conference in here. I took all 129 sessions of WWDC, put the transcripts in there. Did the same thing for Google I/O, and I can go in and ask very specific questions. A lot of things, like with conferences, people watch the keynote and they get all excited, and they start speculating, but they don't go to the sessions. The sessions where the details are, but maybe you can't go to all the sessions. Well, if the recordings are available, put all the sessions into a tool like Notebook LM, and now you have yourself a way to really understand in detail any specific topic, right? The use cases are endless for querying large quantities of text to understand it better. Now, if you need knowledge in the long-term memory, the latent space of an AI model, perhaps to draw broader conclusions as to what's in your data, you can use a regular LLM like Anthropic Claude or Google Gemini, with the understanding and the acceptance of the risk of it making things up is higher. Right? The risk of making stuff up, of hallucinating, is more when you use a general one rather than a system like Notebook LM that is locked down just to the data you provided. But that systematic review is how we leverage knowledge at scale, drawing connections among our data sources and surfacing hidden insights that can only be seen when you put all the puzzle pieces, in the same box lid. If puzzle pieces are all over anywhere, you can't make those connections. You gotta get everything in one place. And that brings us to the last stage of this evolution: teach it to others. Beyond synthesis is creation. And you kind of got a sense of that with Notebook LM, right? Being able to come up with a study guide and quiz questions and things like that. But once you have all the data in one place, you can transform it into a more usable format, streamlined for your particular use case. Now, before we go any further, we have to have a bit of a chat about ethics here. Ethics, morals, law. To paraphrase Jurassic Park, we're often so concerned about whether we could do something that we never stop to think whether we should. Generative AI tools give us incredible capabilities to ingest and synthesize knowledge, often reframing it through a particular lens. Just because we can do that doesn't mean it's always a good idea. And we definitely should not be passing off other people's knowledge as our own. That is intellectually dishonest, illegal in some places, and will most certainly be valid grounds for lawsuit in most others for infringement of intellectual property rights, especially if there's a commercial interest. So, to properly demonstrate this section, we're going to leave Ashley's materials alone. Instead, use something a little closer to home. This newsletter, my newsletter, more specifically, the last year of it. Why? Because it's my material. Because it's mine, there are zero ethical issues with me messing around with it, transforming it, processing it, doing all sorts of stuff, making new things from it. We'll follow the exact same procedures in the first three parts: get the data, process the data, consolidate the data, synthesize the data. But we're going to take it to the next step and build an information product. And again, do this with stuff that you have the rights to do it with, not someone else's. So how are we going to do this? We'll start off with Gemini. I'm going to load in here a system prompt that I made, a system set of instructions for taking things like transcripts and newsletters and turning them into a book. I'm going to start off with my opening prompt. My opening prompt is going to say, I have all these materials here, and I want you to help me build a book. I've got all my newsletters. So I want you to read through my newsletters to understand what's in them, right? Because that's kind of important. And then I want you to understand the contents, decide what is and is not relevant from these newsletters for around the topic of generative AI. Because obviously I write a lot of stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean it's relevant. So let's go ahead and get my newsletters together here. This is 191,000 tokens, which works out to about 140,000 words. Okay, so it clearly understands that because it has already started to try and write the book, which we don't want it to do just yet. I'm going to say next, I want you to analyze my newsletters for my writing style. And I'm going to give you 20 different aspects of writing style. You never, ever, ever want to tell a model, hey, just tell me what the writing style is, right? Because that's not specific enough. Writing style there's so much to writing, right? There's pace and mood and rhythm and diction and syntax and structure and punctuation, vocabulary, all this stuff. You want a model to give you specifics about it. And so I made a long list of the different components of writing style. You can look them up. You can ask a model, what are the components of writing style, to develop a list of your own. But you want this thing to be tackling your writing or the content you're working with those very specific details. So we can see here it's coming up with things like nature, figurative language, pace, paragraph structure, point of view, punctuation, and it's telling me about this is 100 different newsletters. Overall, what is my writing style? And I think we're almost at the list of all the things, but this is a very comprehensive look at writing style that is telling the model this is how to behave, right? Because I want it to understand who I am. Whenever someone says, by the way, hey, I can't get Chat GPT to sound like me, yeah, because you didn't give it enough parameters and you probably didn't give it enough data. The two things have gone wrong there. So now let's figure out what's in my newsletters. I'm going to say, give me a classification. What have I written about? Because I don't remember. But what have I written out specific to generative AI? Christopher Penn's major generative AI topics in almost timely newsletters: fundamentals and concepts, practical applications and use cases, ethical considerations and societal impacts. And I've done a lot of writing. Strategic recommendations and best practices. So I've done a lot of writing on this topic. Now, I feel like there's some stuff missing there. So I'm going to say, in addition to that, I'm going to give you 2 transcripts of talks that I've delivered, because I've delivered a lot of talks, as you can imagine, on generative AI, and I want to give it a couple of my keynotes so it can see more examples of the kinds of things I talk about. You're going to notice, by the way, what we're doing here is we're essentially building our own database. Right? We are not relying on the AI model to know how I personally think about generative AI. We're relying on my stuff. This is why it won't sound like AI when we're done, because it's being fed data from a human source, a very specific human source. So now with my talks, it now says, hey, you've done a lot of other stuff here. Here's your generative AI fundamentals, practical applications and use cases, ethical considerations, strategic recommendations, and best practices. That's good. I like that. I want to continue to add to that. So I'm going to say, hey, here's everything I've talked about on my YouTube channel about generative AI in, I don't know, the last year or so. It's all the closed captions. Same thing we did with Ashley's stuff. Now we're just going to do it with my stuff and at significant scale. So this is about 200,000 tokens, about 150,000 words. My goodness, I do talk a lot. And now it has processed. It's done 400,000 words of me yapping about generative AI. That's about 400,000 tokens, 300,000 words. There's got to be something useful in there to make a book, right? So what we would say is, with all the information I provided, start building out the 15 chapter book. I'm going with 15 chapters. You can make any arbitrary number you wanted. And I'm going to give it a specific format. So I said, I want this thing to cover these topics. I want to specifically cover those big 7 use cases. Here's the format, the way I want you to write the outline for this book. And so it's going to say the intelligence revolution, why generative AI matters. Section 1, beyond the hype. Section 2, the exponential pace of change. Section 3, and this is just chapter 1. And it's going to go through all 15 chapters now. Okay, we're done. We're done with the outline. Chapter 1, the intelligence revolution, why generative AI matters. Chapter 2, speaking prompt engineering fundamentals. Chapter 3, creating new content. Chapter 4, extraction. Chapter 5, summarization. This is what I want. This is going to take my stuff that I've given it and turn it into a really nice book, right? This is what, if I was going to write this book by hand, this is exactly how I would do it, exactly the format that I would do it in. Right? And there's a good amount of stuff in here. So this outline is terrific. I will absolutely copy and paste this and save this outline because this is super helpful. Now, how do you get to write a book? You don't just say, hey, write the book. That's not going to go well. What you have to say is you want to reference specific things and have it do it piece by piece. I'm used to only 400,000 of the 2 million tokens. So I've got plenty of room left in this session's memory to be able to keep writing. So what I'm going to say is, and this is why I had it labeled this very specific way, I want to be able to say at any point, write chapter 12, section 4, right? So we're going to start off with chapter 1, section 1. And the prompt I'm going to give it is I'm going to say, we're going to start writing, strictly adhere to my writing style as outlined. The book outline provided and the contents of the transcripts and the newsletters with chapter 1, section 1. Aim for a minimum of 20 paragraphs. Write as much as necessary. Rely almost exclusively on the things I've said and written. One important consideration, and this goes back to ethics and morals. One important consideration is to use my writing voice as much as possible. Right? The easiest way to do that is to copy verbatim as much of my original writing and speaking as possible rather than trying to rewrite it. When it makes sense to do so, copy verbatim what I've said, adjusting grammar, spelling, and punctuation so that it's my writing and my voice as much as possible. It's not plagiarism because it's all my stuff, right? So copy as much as you can, word for word, phrase for phrase, to use my voice and writing as frequently as possible. That is critical. Ethically, morally, there is no problem with plagiarism here. Just ripping off previous content because it's all mine. It's everything that I've said. If I was doing this with Ashley's content, that would be not okay. That would be not okay in so many ways, particularly if I was going to try and pass it off as mine. It would equally not be okay for me to give it my writing style and say, here's all Ashley's stuff, write me a book on thought leadership. Not okay. But my stuff, I can rip off myself as much as I want. And what do we get? We're starting to get the first piece of the book, chapter 1, section 1. Right? And we can see it's pulling, it's trying to pull my stuff. Right? And I could say, if I, it looks like it had a bit of a hiccup there, which is fine. We can retry it later. But I could say, right, chapter 2, section 1. And then what do? You glue it all together. You glue it all together over and over again, and put all the pieces together. So let's let it churn away here. The Woefully Incomplete Guide to Generative AI second edition, probably on the way, right? I'm using all my data I've created over the last 2 years, my newsletters, my keynotes, my YouTube channel, the works. I put it all in one place, and the magic that happens is crazy. The language model has outlined the book for me. It's given me feedback on the outline. I've had it start writing the book piece by piece. And because the context window is so big, so large, there's no longer a limit on being able to do this kind of task in one sitting, in one session. That means it'll be coherent, it'll be intelligent, it will be me. Now, will it sound machine made? Yes, there will still be tells. The measures like perplexity and burstiness are ways you can detect AI writing. And even though it's using my words as much as it can, it will still have those hallmarks of AI content, but it will sound substantially more like me because I've told it to plagiarize from me. I've told it just to rip off my words. Let's see how we're doing. I'm just curious. Look back in on here. We're in chapter 1, section 2. This is the exponential pace of change. Think about the modern digital age. We're firmly in the years of the intelligence revolution. When change is slow, we adapt. Oh yeah, this is pretty good. So I don't know if I would put that in the first section of the book. I might have the AI do a little rewriting on the outline to maybe move the scary stuff towards the end. But this is 100% my words. It sounds so much like me because it is me. It's my stuff. Again, that's why we start with ethics. There is no practical technological limitation to doing unethical or illegal things with AI. That's the reality of these tools. So we have to be our own conscience. We have to be governed by our own ethics and morals and laws. I can't write anyone else's book for them. I can absolutely write my own for my own stuff. When we're talking about professional development and training, if you were to take all the stuff that you have made in your job, whatever your job is, over the years, emails, memos, training guides, slides, put it all together, regardless of who you are, there's a book there. There's clearly a book there because it's just stuff. If you were to gather up all of your stuff and have language models read it, you could have them synthesize your book for you. You've probably written a book because the book's what? 50, 75,000 words, about 75,000 words. Look how much stuff we loaded just from YouTube and newsletters and talks. Like 300,000 words. That's 4 of these. I've written a book 4 times in just foaming at the mouth. How much stuff have you made as a person, as a professional, at work, at home, on your Threads account, on LinkedIn? If you're one of those folks that's always posting on LinkedIn and posting, meaty, weighty posts, or you've got your own newsletter, gather all that stuff up. That is your raw materials for your next thing. So, to wrap up, these 4 stages of using generative AI for professional development highlight the power of these tools to use the knowledge that they have, but they really, really shine when they're given knowledge, when they're given all the pieces they need to generate incredible, thorough, factually correct outputs that sound like you, that sound like your stuff. Right? There is still no substitute for human review. But you can see with the techniques that we looked at today, you can get much closer to your goal of creating educational materials for yourself, for your team, and as long as it's your stuff or stuff that you have the right to use, maybe for the world to create educational materials. Pro tip, the same 300,000 words makes a great course. As always, shameless plug, if you want help doing this kind of thing, it's literally what my company does. So if you want to get started with this use case, just reach out. There's a link in the newsletter to hit me up. All right. What else happened this week? We finished the 3rd and final part of our AI and podcasting series. This week, John and I looked at voice cloning, video cloning, and stuff like that, and some legitimate use cases, reasons why you would want to use that technology, particularly for things like localization, or if you just got COVID and you can't speak. Um, so go check out that the recorded live stream. It's in the newsletter. Also talked about Apple's on-device strategy, the sales process, and why it should be automated. One of my pet peeves: companies that are more loyal to or more giving to new customers than to loyal customers. It annoys me like no you won't believe. And a reminder that you should be changing your prompts when language models themselves change. Let's see what else we got going on. We have some new jobs this week. Analytics lead at Further, content marketing lead at US Bank, digital servicing product marketing manager at US Bank, global campaigns lead at Asana, growth director at Sonobi, growth lead at Snap Magic, lead at Adobe Analytics engineer at Northwestern Mutual, marketing communications lead at Talent Craft, marketing lead at Coactive AI, marketing lead at Inversion, marketing lead at Standard Metrics, Marketo solution lead at US Bank, senior demand generation specialist at Paradigm, and strategic customer marketing lead at Spring Health. So lots of stuff going on there. Upcoming events, the big one where everyone's talking about right now is the Marketing AI Conference in Cleveland, which sounds like it's far away in September. It's not. September's not that far away because we're almost to July. I'm going to be sending out a promotion also. Well, not promotion. Yeah, I guess it's a promotion next week. To if you have an event coming up, an association event, an industry event, a company event, and you want me to come speak about this stuff, let me know. I'm more than happy to connect you with the team and we can figure something out. But that will be coming out, I think, Thursday. I just have to remember to film it. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's newsletter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sitting through the very long tutorial. And I hope it gave you some great ideas for how you can turn all of the knowledge that you've generated into your own professional development and training materials, and possibly, again, with stuff that you have rights to use, your own information products. It's one of the things that people talk about all the time. Oh, you should write a book and passive income and all that stuff. And it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work to put that stuff together. But generative AI can help you reduce some of that work by helping you consolidate the things you've already built. So I will talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.